knocks me out just to feel this way. And I broke out and it feels like home.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is Claire Hordle from Pets Great and Small. Tonight we're going to be talking about my top tips for stress-free loose lead walking. So those of you that have been on the challenge this week will have actually done quite a lot of this already, and I'm sure you've all had some really good experiences. But I thought it was worthwhile taking you through what you can do to carry on your training, and then also to offer you courses at the end. And I say courses because we have 3 new courses to offer you tonight, so that we can make sure that if you're wanting to continue training, you can certainly do that. If you do have any questions or anything as I go through, please do unmute yourselves and just ask away, okay? I'll try not to burst your eardrums by coughing all the way through. Okay, so does your dog pull or become easily distracted on walks? I assume because you're here, the answer to that is yes. Does it seem like a very difficult task? I think the answer to that for most people is yes as well, isn't it? So here are my top tips to help you on your way. Now, what's important as we go through this is remember everything doesn't happen overnight. We do have to be particularly patient when it comes to loose lead walking. It is a skill that's learned over a period of time. It's not something that can be fixed just in one session. Okay, the equipment. So the equipment that you should use when you're loose lead walking, you should have a flat lead, i.e. not an extendable or retractable lead, but a lead with a handle, or even a training lead that's got 2 clips, one at each end. You should also have a flat collar around your dog's neck. This is so that if you wanted to use a 1-point harness, you could use a flat collar as well. Or you could use a 2-point harness, which, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got the Perfect Fit harness, which is a good example of a 2-point harness that has a ring at the top, at the back, and also on the front, where you could actually attach a training lead to the front and the back of the harness. We also want to motivate your dogs. So we also want to have treats, or if your dog is not particularly food motivated, you can use praise, you can use the tone of your voice, and you can also use touch. Okay. So the first exercise that you should be doing before you even leave your home is watch me. This is where you put a treat on your dog's nose and bring it up to your face. And when your dog gives you eye contact, you say good and you give them a treat. Now, this is really, really useful, and you can actually start to get quite a long duration with Watch Me. So if you just start with a fleeting glimpse in your face, you can then increase it for 1, 2, 5, 10 seconds. Okay, so you're always trying to increase it, and you're trying to increase the amount of focus that your dog has on you before you leave the house. If the dog begins to be distracted on the walk, you can refocus them using a Watch Me. So as you're walking along, if they're starting to become really focused on the environment and not necessarily on you, then you can actually get their focus back onto you by using a Watch Me. And the more you do this at home, in the comfort of your home, then the more this will happen when you go out. The important thing to realise is that with dog training, you have to train for a situation and not in a situation. So the more you do it in low distraction environments such as your home or your garden, the more successful you will be when you're out and about. So if you practice this every day for a week, what happens? Well, I think most people who've been on the course this week, on the challenge, will say that they've had some success as the course has progressed. Some people are still finding it difficult, but for the most part, you can actually practice it and become better at it as your week progresses or as time progresses. Stop and go. Okay, so this is a really important skill that will help you if your dog likes to pull. So if your dog begins to go in front of your leg, then just stop, coax them back to your leg using either a kissy noise, pat your leg, and say heel or close to your dog, call them by their name, and get them back to your leg. Once they're back at your leg, you say good and you reward them. Then you can say heel or close again and walk on. And every time they go in front of your toes, you just stop. And then as soon as they're back behind your toes, you can go again. So to begin with, you may not make much distance on this because it is a method that essentially means that every time they move forwards, you're stopping, but it will help to get the dog to associate with walking next to your leg. And on the left-hand side there, you can see Max with Jacob. So Max was a proficient puller. He used to pull like a train. And this was one of the first sessions that I actually had with Max, where we managed to get him actually walking next to Jacob's leg just by using the stop and go method. So it does work. It is something that is, excuse me, is worthwhile trying. You can also do it where if your dog goes out further than beyond your toes, you could do it when the dog, when you start to feel a little bit of stress on the lead. Or you can just do it when the lead is loose. So it's up to you, really. But the whole idea with loose lead walking is that you have a dog next to you, walking behind your toes with a nice, happy, loopy lead. So it's really important that you actually think about how they're walking, and if they're going too far, if they're pulling away to go and look at different things, then you can actually, correct that as quickly as possible. A couple of things to mention on this is that I'd really like it if you don't pull your dog back to you, if you don't jag them, either on the neck, if you're using a collar, or on the harness, because that's not really going to make any sense whatsoever to the dog. In fact, all the dog will feel is a sharp jolt, and they'll just go, and it might get their attention for a second, but actually what we're trying to do here is get our dogs to work with us and to actually want to be by our sides. So the nicer we can get them to be by our sides, the better. Again, if your dog doesn't take treats, you can stop when they get back to your leg. You can give them a really good stroke, reward them with a high pitch, well done, and then off you go again. Okay? Are there any questions on that at all? Silence. I take silence as a no. Okay, let's move on. Changing direction and pace. Another method you can use when you're loose lead walking is changing direction. So every time your dog goes in front of your leg, you change direction and say this way. So it could be if your dog is on the right hand side of you and they go in front of your leg, you turn to your left and go this way. You could also turn about so that the dog is going in totally a different direction. Now, obviously, this is not a great method if you're walking along roads, and I wouldn't advise this method if you're walking along the road, but I would advise it if you were, say, walking down a track or if you were in a park, as this is a good way of your dog starting to think, oh, where are they gone? What are they doing? And this is Chester on the left-hand side here. Chester is a dog that I walk regularly now, but he came to me in November. He actually had, I think it was about 4 loose lead walking lessons, and went away, and his loose lead walking has been fab ever since. So he's one of my success stories. He wasn't particularly a dramatic puller. It hadn't become a particular habit for him. He was a young dog, got excited when he went out. So it's important just to think about, you know, is your dog just an excited young dog, or is this becoming a bit of a habit? Because obviously, if it's a habit, it's going to be um, harder to break the habit than if it's just a young dog that needs to be trained for the first time. Another way of trying to get your dog next to your leg is a figure of eight. So figure of eights are a really great way to gain focus from your dog. As what happens is when you're doing a figure of eight, your dog is really constantly turning. You're doing two lots of circles, so they're going to have to focus on you to know exactly where they're going, especially if you then change direction within those two circles. And what I would do is I would have two poles or bottles or cones in place just to remind you where to go, and I would have those about between 2 and 4 steps, your normal steps apart. Okay, so that's what I would do for figure of eights. Now, don't panic if your dog suddenly goes off and goes in a totally different direction to the direction that you're going in when you're doing a figure of eight, because you can stop and you can coax them back in the same way as you would for the stop and go. What I also would like you to try is pace. Now, we did this week. We did pace, and some people found that if they quickened their pace, then their dog would actually walk with them better. Other people found that if they slowed their pace, then the dog would slow down with them. Now, typically, what tends to happen is that if you're a fairly fast walker, your dog will get very excited and they'll want to walk fast. So if you're going out on a leisurely stroll, your dog still thinks that they want to walk fast. So by trying to change your pace regularly when you're walking your dog will be able to understand that sometimes they walk, sometimes they slow down. Sometimes they walk fast, sometimes they slow down, and so on and so forth. That way, you'll find that your dog will start measuring their pace against yours. And that's really important, because if you're going to have a successful relationship with your dog walking along, then you'll need them to be able to slow their pace down or quicken their pace depending on whereabouts you are. Are there any questions on changing direction or pace at all?
Hi, Claire. I have a quick question on the changing direction.
Sure.
Okay, to start, obviously, my dog pulls like a train right now. She's just a puppy still. So I've got a question. When I'm changing pace, or more changing direction, does she needs to be inside or outside while I'm changing direction?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, that's
Doesn't
great.
matter, no. I mean, I think really for a puppy, it's probably better to have her on the outside so that she's turning a wider circle. So you're not putting a huge amount of stress on her joints if you're doing a sharp turn. But to be honest with you, as long as you're not doing it like all the time, then it's not going to make a big difference to her, to be honest with you. So it's a great question, but I would just, I wouldn't cut across her necessarily. I would just turn in the direction. So if she was going off to the right, I'd go off to the left. If she was going to the left, I'd go off to the right. And that way she's always on the outside. But at the same time, she's not being cut off. She's actually being asked to come with you, as opposed to, you sort of cutting across her tracks, because the last thing I'd want you to do is to fall over her or anything silly like that.
Okay, no, that's great.
No worries.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Okay, perfect. All right, gaining momentum. So the key things to focus on when you're doing loose lead walking is consistency. So get your terminology already defined before you start. So decide, are you going to say this way, When you turn, are you going to say heel? Are you going to say close? When you stand still and you stop, are you going to say stop to your dog, or are you not going to say anything? You know, get that consistency already established, and then share that with the other members of your family or the other people in your household that are going to be working with the dog. And if you have a dog walker or somebody who like daycare or something like that, let them know what focal cues you're using and ask them to use it too, because the consistency is really, really important for your dog to understand that when they're on lead, this is what the expectation is for them. Then also you want to have repetition. So try to do everything the same when you take them out. And I don't mean going the same route or go or even do the same thing every day. What I mean is when you're working them, make sure that you're working them in a repetitive manner. Make sure that it's consistent all the way through. So if you're going to go out and train and you're doing stop and go, make sure that stop and go is the same stop and go that you did last time. Okay, it might be a little bit more difficult. You might be changing the criteria. So you might expect this time when they stop instead of just stopping and standing next to you. But it's a repetitive nature that will then ingrain in your dog's head what the behavior is that you're expecting them to perform. Okay, so it's really, really important that we think about repetition and we think about consistency. The next thing is focus. So unless you have your dog's focus, you will not be able to train your dog. It's that simple. So getting your dog's focus is a key element to actually being successful when you're training your dog, and particularly when you're walking on a loose lead. Remember, walking on a loose lead is one of the most difficult skills that you're going to train your dog, and it's the second most popular training behavior that I get asked to do. So the first one is always recall, because recall is, again, quite a difficult skill to master. But loose lead is the second one. And in my dog owners group, when I asked them about 2 months ago what their top sort of 5 different behaviors were that they're struggling with, recall was number 1, loose lead was number 2. So it's really important that if you take one thing away from today's webinar, it's that you keep consistent with your training and your terminology, that you use repetition in order to be able to train. And within that repetition, you can increase the criteria, you can increase how difficult it is for your dog to do, but it still has to be in a consistent manner. And then focus. Always practice focus with your dog. Remember, you and your dog, you're a partnership. So in my life, my dogs are members of my family. They do everything with me when I'm not at work. And, you know, I expect them to be focused on me if I'm going out. If I'm walking down the road, I don't want them pulling me left, right, and centre, or pulling me into the road or anything like that. So it's really important that I get their focus. So from an early age, my dogs were taught to do a watch me. And whilst it's a very simple skill, it's the skill that will revolutionize your training. The other key aspect is actually start in a low distraction area. So make sure that you either start working in your home or in your garden. These are the types of areas where your dog's going to feel most relaxed. They are, whilst they have distractions, they're not going to be as full as distractions as the local park or the local wooded area or wherever you normally take your dog. So try to start somewhere that's low distraction, where there aren't loads of dogs around, where you can just get your dog to focus on you and just have some fun, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. We've got a dog so that we can have fun. And whilst loose lead walking isn't the most fun element, it's got a lot of practical purpose. And actually, if your dog does it well, then, you know, you can feel really proud when you're walking down the road with your dog walking lovely beside you. So if you start in your own home, if your home's not very big, it doesn't matter, because you don't necessarily need to be walking for long periods of time. Even if you've got a hallway that's only kind of 4 steps from the door to the stairs, you can just do those 4 steps, or across your living room. It doesn't really matter to begin with. It's more about getting that consistency in your training, rather than going out and maybe failing because your dog's pulled you towards another dog, or they've been excited by a van going past, or a cyclist, or a runner, or something like that. So that's really important. The other thing I would say as well is train for a situation, not in the situation. So make sure that you're always thinking about, what are my dog's weakest distractions? So do they like cyclists? Do they like runners? Where are we going to see those types of distractions, and maybe avoid them for the next month whilst you're training this, and then start to build on distractions slowly. A really good way of building on distractions is actually taking your dog to your garden, or even in your home if you prefer, or renting one of the secure park areas for your dog parks, and taking some toys, some food, maybe having your kids, if you've got children, if you've got other dogs, maybe having them sort of running around, and then put those out, so you've got kind of like a distraction alley, and then you're going to walk your dog down those and have like a bowl of food at the end, and maybe have some kibble or something like that in there, and try and get your dog to ignore it, and then turn around and come back. And when you're doing that successfully, then maybe build up the distractions by going out of your garden, and maybe going to the local park and trying it at the local park. So the important thing is that you don't expect miracles to happen. Okay, start with a small amount of steps, working actually on a loose lead. So expect focus for 2 steps, and then maybe build up to 10, then 20, then 30, etc., etc., etc. So you're always building on what you started from. And if your dog gets distracted after 5 steps, go back to 2. But just don't build yourself up to fail. Always set yourself a minimum goal that you want to achieve, and try to achieve that goal. But don't feel like a failure if you don't quite get there the first time you try. Build up to it. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on gaining momentum? Great. Okay, so what do you do if you're struggling? Well, if you're struggling, we are launching our 4-week one-to-one loose lead life skills walking course today. This will be held in Public Park in Reading. It's normally valued at £300, but I'm going to be selling it for £200 until the 31st of March this year. It's full of ideas of how you can train loose lead walking. So if you're really struggling with pulling, we can resolve it within those 4 weeks and get you on the right track. The course is designed with lots of games and lots of tasks in mind, so that we can structure the course dependent on the individual needs of that particular dog. So the first week will be an assessment of where you are, what you're doing currently. And within that first hour, we will then set up the training plan for the following 3 weeks, and you'll go home with some homework. Week 2, 3, and 4 will be practicing what we've done, with the week 4 graduation being you guys coming back and showing me exactly how you've been doing. And then you will graduate, and you'll be able to go on to future courses, or go away and just practice what you've already learned. I've also launched a mini 2-week road walking course for £100 today. So this will normally be £150, but it will be £100 until the 31st of March. Now, the reason why I have decided to do a road walking course is that I get a lot of people asking me questions about how do I make sure me and my dog are safe on the road? What should we be doing? Where should we be walking? How do I get my dog to pay attention to me when I've got cyclists going past, vans, all that kind of stuff? So I'm going to talk to you about road safety. We're going to go for walks in high traffic environments. So we'll be going for walks like down the Basingstoke Road. So nowhere that's unsafe, pavement areas, just to make sure that, you know, you've got some really good skills that you can then go away and practice doing your road walking. So that's a 2-week road walking course. So if you feel like they are a bit basic for you and you're already quite proficient at loose lead walking, but you want to actually get some bells and whistles, then you can join the 4-week advanced loose lead walking course. And this is where we're going to actually test the loose lead walking skills, and we're going to go for walks in high distraction environments. So we're going to go for environments such as local retail parks. We're going to go to areas such as local dog walking parks, and we're going to instruct your dog on how to walk properly, focused on you within those type of environments. We're also going to play some very advanced loose lead walking games, so there'll be lots of games that you can play as well. So this is normally valued at £300 again, but will be £200 until the 31st of March this year. And then just to give you a little bit of an incentive, if you wanted to join all 3 courses, you can do, and that will be £450 until the end of March. That's a saving of £300 on the RRP, and will give you 10 weeks of training. So if your dog is not the best loose lead walker in Berkshire by the end of those 10 weeks, then I don't know who would be, to be honest. But your dog would certainly be very much on their way. Okay, so at the beginning of the challenge, I said that I would be giving away a 4-week course. And I'd like to congratulate Alicia and Patch, as they've been our top contributor for the challenge this week. And you have won the 4-week loose lead life skills walking course. So I will be sending you the coupon code so you can get that free of charge. So congratulations, Alicia. Great work.
Thank you very much.
Somebody in the chat. Yeah. So Malika actually won our previous challenge. She won the recall and has been doing the recall course, haven't you, Malika?
Yes, I have. Yes, Ollie and I, and Warner.
Yeah, Ollie, Warner, and Malika have been doing a fantastic job. So hopefully you guys will pass the baton on to Alicia and Patch, and then they can have their top contributors badge for this one.
Well done, Alicia and Patch.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for attending, everybody. If you would like to join any of the courses, please email me and I'll send you through the relevant codes. What we'll also do is, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to stay on the line, but I will stop recording now. So just bear with me a second. I'm just going to stop recording.